The sun was just beginning to climb above the distant hills, casting a soft golden light over the small, dusty town of Red River. The streets were quiet, and the wind carried the faint scent of wildflowers mixed with the earthy aroma of dry soil. In a modest home near the edge of town lived Mei Ling, a Chinese widow, and her 2 young sons, Li Wei and Jun. Their house was small but well kept, with a garden where Mei Ling grew vegetables and herbs, and a few chickens pecked happily in the yard. Life was simple, and every day brought new challenges, but Mei Ling faced them with quiet determination. She had lost her husband several years ago, leaving her to raise the boys alone, and she had learned to find strength in the small joys of daily life. Mei Ling's sons were lively and curious, full of energy and always eager to explore. Li Wei, the elder, was 12 years old, thoughtful and careful, often helping his mother with chores and keeping an eye on his younger brother. Jun, only 9, was adventurous and mischievous, constantly running ahead on errands or chasing after a stray butterfly. Despite the hardships they faced, the family shared laughter, kindness, and a deep bond that made their humble home feel warm and full of love. One afternoon, as Mei Ling tended to her garden, she noticed something unusual on the horizon. A figure was moving slowly across the dusty plains, barely visible through the shimmering heat. At first she thought it might be a traveler or a local ranch hand, but as the figure came closer, she realized something was terribly wrong. The man was sprawled across a horse that struggled to keep pace, and he appeared weak, barely holding onto the reins. Mei Ling's heart skipped a beat. Without hesitation, she called her sons. "Li Wei, Jun, come quickly! Someone needs our help." The boys ran from the house, their bare feet kicking up small clouds of dust. Mei Ling grabbed a large shawl and a bucket of water, while the boys looked on with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The man was almost at the edge of the town, his horse stumbling over small rocks, its rider slumping forward. As they approached, Mei Ling could see that the man was badly injured. His clothes were torn, and his face was pale with exhaustion and blood. He barely lifted his head as Mei Ling spoke softly. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The man groaned and tried to lift a hand, but it fell weakly to his side. Li Wei and Jun quickly ran to help, supporting the horse while Mei Ling knelt beside the man. She could feel the heat of his fevered skin and saw the deep cuts on his arms and legs. "We have to get him inside," Mei Ling said, her mind racing. "Quickly, boys, help me." The family worked together with surprising coordination. Li Wei held the horse steady while Jun ran to the house for blankets and water. Mei Ling carefully helped the man from the horse, supporting his weight as she guided him to the small wagon they used to carry supplies. It was a slow and difficult process, but they managed to bring him safely to their home. Inside the modest house, Mei Ling laid the man on a clean bed and gently examined his wounds. Blood had dried in places and dirt clung to his skin. She soaked cloths in warm water and began cleaning his cuts, her hands steady despite the tension in her chest. The boys watched, wide-eyed but eager to help. Li Wei brought fresh water while Jun offered a small bowl of food. Mei Ling smiled at their concern, proud of their willingness to assist someone in need. Hours passed as Mei Ling tended to the man. She bandaged his wounds, gave him water and broth, and whispered soothing words to ease his pain. The man, whose name they would later learn was Jackson Hayes, stirred occasionally but remained mostly unconscious. He was a stranger in every sense, yet Mei Ling and her sons treated him as if he were family. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Jackson opened his eyes slightly. His gaze was confused, scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. Mei Ling spoke softly. "You are safe now. Rest. We will take care of you." The man tried to speak, but his voice was weak and raspy. Thank you," he managed to whisper. Mei Ling nodded gently. "There is no need to thank us. You are hurt. That is enough." The boys brought warm blankets and adjusted his position, trying to make him more comfortable. Jackson looked at them, feeling a mix of gratitude and surprise. He was a wealthy man, used to relying on servants and ranch hands, yet here he was cared for by a widow and her 2 children in a small, humble home. The simplicity and sincerity of their actions struck him deeply, and for the first time in a long while he felt a warmth he had never known. Over the next few days, Jackson remained in the care of Mei Ling and her sons. His strength slowly returned and he began to speak more. He told fragments of his story, how he had been traveling between ranches when a wild horse had thrown him violently, leaving him injured and alone in the desert. He spoke little of his wealth, for it did not matter now. What mattered was the kindness of the small family who had saved his life, without expecting anything in return. Mei Ling listened quietly, asking gentle questions, but never prying too deeply. She wanted to know enough to help him recover, but not to make him feel uncomfortable. The boys, curious and playful, asked questions with endless enthusiasm, wanting to know everything about his journey, his horse, and the distant lands he had seen. Jackson could not help but smile at their energy, feeling a sense of belonging he had never felt among the people of his own world. As the days passed, the bond between Jackson and the family grew stronger. He learned to appreciate the quiet strength of Mei Ling, who managed her household with efficiency and care despite her limited resources. He watched as Li Wei helped his mother with chores, always careful and responsible, while Jun's laughter filled the house, chasing away the shadows of pain and fear that had once haunted him. Jackson realized that in their small, simple home, he had found something far more valuable than money or land. He had found kindness, loyalty, and a family who cared for him without question. In turn, Mei Ling and her sons began to trust him, seeing that beneath his rugged exterior was a man who respected and valued life in all its forms. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jackson looked out of the window at the children playing in the yard. He felt a quiet gratitude welling in his heart. He knew he owed his life to this family, and he vowed silently that he would not forget them. Life in the house returned to a gentle rhythm. Jackson helped in small ways as he regained his strength, learning to appreciate the simplicity of the widow's life. The boys taught him little tricks about the land and the animals, and Jackson in return shared stories of the wide world beyond the hills, tales of ranches, rivers, and distant towns. Every evening they would sit together laughing, sharing stories, and feeling a connection that neither time nor circumstance could break. Though the town was small and the world outside vast, the bond formed in those first critical days would set the stage for something extraordinary. Mei Ling and her sons had saved a man's life without knowing the impact it would have on all of them. And Jackson, unaware of the future he would eventually offer them, was already beginning to see the world in a new light, a world where kindness and compassion could change destinies forever. By the time Jackson was strong enough to sit in the garden and watch the boys chase the chickens, a quiet sense of hope filled the house. Mei Ling glanced at him with a soft smile, her heart relieved that he was recovering. The boys ran to him, laughing and calling his name. And for the first time in a long while, Jackson felt truly alive, surrounded by people who cared not for his wealth, but for the man he was and the life he had yet to live. As the days passed after Jackson Hayes' first arrival, the small household of Mei Ling and her sons settled into a comfortable routine. Jackson had grown stronger, his injuries healing steadily, and he had begun to move around the house with ease. Mei Ling watched him closely, her careful attention ensuring he never overexerted himself. The boys, Li Wei and Jun, had grown accustomed to his presence, often following him around the yard or asking endless questions about his travels. Jackson, for his part, was fascinated by their lives. He had lived most of his adult years alone, surrounded by ranches, land, and hired help. But he had never known a family like Mei Ling's. The bond between mother and sons was unshakable, and their kindness toward him touched a part of his heart that had long been buried beneath wealth and solitude. One bright morning, as the sun rose over the hills, Jackson stepped into the garden where Mei Ling was tending to her vegetables. The boys were already at work, gathering herbs and feeding the chickens. Jackson had decided that it was time to contribute in some small way, to show his appreciation for the family that had saved his life. "Mei Ling," he said gently, "let me help you today. I can carry water and gather some vegetables." Mei Ling looked at him with a kind but hesitant smile. "Thank you, Jackson, but you must not tire yourself. You have been through much already." Jackson shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "I feel well now. I want to do something for you." Li Wei and Jun exchanged excited glances. They were thrilled to see Jackson working alongside them, moving carefully among the plants and learning the names of the vegetables. Li Wei explained the importance of each plant, how the herbs could be used for medicine, how the tomatoes needed support to grow tall, and how the soil had to be nurtured for the best crops. Jun, ever playful, ran ahead to chase a stray chicken, laughing as Jackson tried to catch up. The morning passed with laughter and conversation. Jackson realized how much he had missed the simple joys of life, the warmth of sun on his face, the fresh scent of earth, and the laughter of children unburdened by worry. He shared stories of his travels describing distant towns and wide-open ranches, and the boys listened with wide-eyed fascination. Mei Ling, while working quietly, observed him carefully, noting the gentle way he treated the boys and the respect he showed for their home. As the week went on, Jackson began to take a more active role in their daily life. He helped repair the down fence around the garden, learning from Mei Ling's careful instructions. He carried water from the well and helped Li Wei lift heavy sacks of grain. Jun, full of energy, followed him around, asking questions about life on a ranch and how to ride a horse. Jackson found himself teaching the boys small skills he had learned over the years: how to calm a restless animal, how to identify edible plants, and how to mend torn clothing. During these days, Jackson began to open up more about his past. He spoke sparingly about his wealth, focusing instead on the experiences that had shaped him. He told the family about the loneliness he had felt growing up on a large ranch with few friends, about the trust he had struggled to find among adults, and about the danger he had faced during his travels. Mei Ling listened quietly, never interrupting, her eyes soft with understanding. The boys were fascinated by his stories, asking questions that revealed their curiosity about the world beyond their town. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Jackson asked Mei Ling a question he had been hesitant to voice before. "Mei Ling, may I ask, how did you come to live here all alone with your sons? It must have been very difficult." Mei Ling paused, her hands stilling over the basket of vegetables she was sorting. She looked at Jackson and then at her sons, who were playing nearby. "It was not easy," she said softly. "Your heart knows what it is like to lose someone dear. I lost my husband many years ago, and since then it has been only my sons and me. We have struggled, yes, but we have also found strength in each other. We have each other, and that is enough." Jackson nodded slowly, feeling a profound respect for the woman before him. She had faced hardship without complaint, raising 2 sons alone, teaching them honesty, respect, and kindness. In that moment, he understood why he felt so drawn to this small family. Their courage and perseverance reminded him of values he had long forgotten in his pursuit of wealth. The boys, sensing the serious tone, gathered around Jackson, their eyes full of curiosity. Li Wei asked, "Jackson, do you live alone too? Do you have a family?" Jackson's gaze softened. "I do not have a family nearby. I have people who work for me, yes, but I have never known a family like yours. I have never felt the warmth of a home like this." Jun, with a mischievous grin, jumped up. "Then you must stay here. You can be part of our family." Jackson laughed, a sound full of genuine joy, and ruffled Jun's hair. "Perhaps I shall," he said. The boys cheered, their laughter filling the garden, blending with the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. As the days turned into weeks, Jackson became more than a guest in Mei Ling's home. He shared meals with the family, helped with chores, and even accompanied them into town to gather supplies. The townspeople watched with curiosity and surprise, whispering about the unlikely friendship between the Chinese widow and the rich cowboy. Some were skeptical, unable to imagine how a man of Jackson's wealth could find comfort and companionship in such a humble household. But Jackson paid no attention to the gossip. He had found something far more valuable than wealth or status. He had found trust, respect, and a connection that warmed his heart in ways he had never imagined. One evening, after a long day of work and laughter, Jackson sat on the porch with Mei Ling, watching the sunset behind the distant hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting off the dust in the air. The boys were playing nearby, their voices carrying across the yard. Jackson turned to Mei Ling, his expression thoughtful. "You have given me more than I could ever repay," he said quietly. "Your kindness, your courage, It has changed me. Mei Ling shook her head, a soft smile on her lips. You do not need to repay us. We did what anyone with a kind heart would do. You were in need, and we helped. That is enough. Jackson nodded, feeling a mixture of humility and gratitude. He realized that he had spent much of his life chasing success and possessions, yet he had never encountered the kind of loyalty and selflessness that Mei Ling and her sons embodied. He began to understand that true wealth was not measured in gold or land, but in the strength of human connections and the love shared between people. As the weeks continued, Jackson's presence brought a subtle change to the household. He helped Mei Ling with tasks that had once been difficult, lifting heavy sacks, repairing the roof, and even learning to cook a simple meal or two. The boys, in turn, learned from him, gaining confidence and skill in tasks they had never attempted before. Together, the family created a rhythm that was comforting and joyful, a harmony that left each of them feeling stronger and more hopeful. Even in the quiet moments, Jackson found himself observing the family with a sense of wonder. He watched, Li Wei patiently teaching Jun how to plant seeds in the garden, their hands working together in careful synchronization. He listened as Mei Ling hummed a soft melody while cooking, the boys' laughter mingling with the sound. For Jackson, these simple moments became precious, more valuable than anything he had ever owned. In time, the townspeople began to notice the growing bond between Jackson and Mei Ling's family. They saw the cowboy laughing alongside the boys, helping Mei Ling with her daily chores, and treating everyone in the town with a quiet respect that was new to him. Some began to approach Mei Ling, offering help or simply expressing curiosity, but she remained modest and polite, always redirecting attention to the kindness that Jackson had shown in return. By the end of the second month, Jackson was fully recovered. He could walk long distances, work alongside the boys in the garden, and even ride a horse once more. Yet, despite his return to strength, he did not rush to leave. He had come to cherish his time with Mei Ling and her sons, recognizing that their lives had changed him in ways he had never expected. One evening, as the family sat together by the fire, Jackson looked around the small room, noticing the warmth, the laughter, and the love that filled the air. He realized that he had found a home in the most unexpected place, a humble house, at the edge of a small town, filled with a widow and her two sons who had saved his life without hesitation. And in that moment, he understood that some of life's greatest treasures were not possessions or money, but the bonds formed through compassion, trust, and unwavering care. One afternoon, the sky darkened with heavy clouds and the wind began to howl across the plains surrounding the small town. The townspeople hurried to secure their homes and livestock, sensing that a violent storm was approaching. Mei Ling moved quickly to bring in the chickens and cover the garden with cloths to protect her plants, while Li Wei and Jun ran back and forth, helping wherever they could. The air was thick with tension, and even the boys could feel the urgency in their mother's voice. Jackson Hayes, who had grown stronger over the past weeks, watched from the porch as the storm approached. The sight of the darkening sky brought a sense of unease he had not felt before. Though he had survived harsh weather and injuries during his travels, the intensity of this storm seemed different, closer, more dangerous. Mei Ling noticed the concern on his face and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "We will be safe inside," she said softly. "Come, Jackson. Help us secure the house." Inside the small home, the family worked together to ensure everything was safe. Windows were fastened, doors locked, and furniture moved away from the walls. Mei Ling lit a few oil lamps to brighten the room as the wind began to rattle the house. Jackson helped with every task, moving quickly but carefully, his respect for the family growing with each passing moment. The boys, though frightened by the approaching storm, remained calm under Mei Ling's guidance, their trust in her unwavering. As the first drops of rain began to fall, the storm intensified rapidly. Thunder roared across the sky and lightning lit up the dark clouds in blinding flashes. The wind shook the house violently and Mei Ling held the boys close, her own heart pounding with worry. Jackson, standing nearby, realized that despite all the hardships he had faced in his life, this moment felt terrifying in a way he had never experienced. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house. One of the old trees in the yard had been struck by lightning, and a branch smashed against the roof. Dust and debris fell and the boys cried out in fear. Mei Ling moved quickly. shielding them with her body while Jackson grabbed a broom to clear the debris blocking the door. The storm raged on outside, but inside the small house, the family worked together with determination and courage. As the night wore on, Jackson began to feel unwell. The combination of his past injuries, the stress of the storm, and the cold rain seeping into the house weakened him. He shivered violently, his skin pale and clammy, and he struggled to stay upright. Mei-ling noticed immediately. "Jackson!" she cried, rushing to his side. "You must lie down. You are ill." He tried to protest, insisting that he was fine, but Mei-ling would not hear it. With the boy's help, she guided him to the bed and tucked him in, covering him with warm blankets. She cleaned his sweat-drenched hair and placed a bowl of warm broth near him. Jackson, too weak to argue, allowed himself to be cared for, realizing once again the depth of the family's kindness. The storm continued through the night, and Jackson's condition worsened. He developed a high fever and his breathing became labored. Mei-ling did not leave his side, wiping his forehead with a damp cloth, adjusting the blankets, and speaking softly to calm him. Li Wei and Jun took turns sitting by the bed holding his hand, offering small sips of water and whispering words of encouragement. Their love and concern seemed to strengthen Jackson, even as his body fought against the illness. Hours passed like this, the storm outside echoing the turmoil inside the house. Jackson drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind clouded with fever. He saw flashes of the storm through the window and felt the warmth of Mei-ling's hands on his skin. He heard the gentle voices of the boys, and in those moments he felt a strange mixture of fear and comfort. He realized, perhaps for the first time in his life, how much he needed these people, not for wealth, status, or power, but simply for the safety and love they provided. As the night turned to early morning, the storm finally began to subside. The rain lessened to a drizzle, and the wind lost its ferocity. Jackson's breathing remained shallow, but his fever had started to break. Mei-ling, exhausted but relieved, continued to care for him, checking his pulse and ensuring he had enough to drink. The boys, equally tired, rested briefly but remained close, unwilling to leave his side even for a moment. During this long night, Jackson's thoughts wandered. He reflected on the life he had led, one filled with wealth, land, and success, yet lonely and empty. He realized that despite everything he owned, he had never known the kind of unconditional care and devotion that Mei-ling and her sons had shown him. They had saved his life not once but twice, the first time from his injuries in the desert and now from the threat of illness brought on by the storm. He could not put into words the gratitude he felt, only the profound sense that these people had become a part of his life in a way he could never have anticipated. By mid-morning, Jackson began to show signs of recovery. His eyes opened more clearly and he could sit up with assistance. Mei-ling helped him drink some broth and eat a small piece of bread. The boys cheered softly, relieved to see him improving. Jackson managed a weak smile, touched by their unwavering devotion. He realized that he owed his life to this family, and he vowed silently that he would never forget them. In the days that followed, the storm left the town soaked and muddy. Trees had fallen, roads were flooded, and the townspeople were busy repairing the damage. Mei-ling and her sons, however, focused on Jackson's full recovery. They ensured he rested, helped him regain his strength, and continued to care for him as if he were a member of their own family. Jackson, in turn, began to understand the true meaning of loyalty and sacrifice. He saw how much effort Mei-ling had put into saving him, how the boys had faced their own fears during the storm, and how their courage and determination had carried them through the night. Jackson began to take small steps to contribute, despite his lingering weakness. He carried water from the well, helped gather firewood, and even assisted with minor repairs around the house. Mei-ling watched him with a mixture of pride and concern, noticing his determination to be useful despite his fragile state. The boys followed his example, learning to be patient, careful, and compassionate in their actions. The experience of the storm left a lasting impression on all of them. Jackson realized that wealth and power meant little compared to the strength of human connections, the courage to face adversity, and the love shared within a family. Mei-ling and her sons, too, grew closer to Jackson, recognizing the sincerity of his gratitude and the gentle nature beneath his rugged exterior. They had seen him at his weakest, yet he had never demanded more than care and kindness, and in return he had shown respect, patience, and humility. By the end of the week, Jackson had regained his full strength. The house was repaired, the garden tended, and the storm's aftermath had been cleaned up. Yet something intangible had changed. The bond between Jackson and the family had deepened, rooted in shared struggle and mutual respect. Jackson had begun to feel at home in this small household, and he could not imagine leaving, even as the memory of his lonely life outside the town lingered. One evening, as the family sat together around a modest meal, Jackson spoke softly. "I cannot express how grateful I am for all you have done. You have saved my life twice now, and I will never forget your kindness." Mei Ling shook her head, her eyes warm. "You do not owe us anything, Jackson. We did what any person with a heart would do. You were in need, and we helped. That is enough." Jackson smiled, though a trace of emotion shone in his eyes. "Still, I feel I must repay you somehow, even if only with my presence. I want to be part of your lives if you will allow me." The boys cheered softly, rushing to sit beside him. "Yes, Jackson! Stay with us, please." Mei Ling looked at him thoughtfully and then smiled. "You are welcome here, Jackson. You are part of this home now, as long as you wish." That night, as the family settled in for rest, the house felt warmer than it had in weeks. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world fresh and clean, and inside, the bond between Jackson, Mei Ling, and her sons had been solidified by the trials they had endured together. They had faced fear, danger, and exhaustion, yet they had emerged stronger, united, and more compassionate than before. Jackson lay in bed that night, thinking of the two small boys and their courageous mother. He realized that life had given him a rare gift, the chance to belong, to be cared for, and to care for others in return. He understood with a depth he had never known that true wealth was measured not by possessions, but by the strength of relationships and the courage to help others when they are in need. And so, in that small house on the edge of Red River, a bond had been formed that would shape their lives forever, a bond born in a storm, strengthened by courage and sealed by kindness. Jackson knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, but he also knew that with Mei Ling and her sons by his side, he would face them with a heart full of gratitude and a life forever changed.